Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ellie if you're new here. I want to start off by saying that I'm sorry if you hear a lot of background noise. I live in a city on a busy street, so c'est la vie. And right now you're propped up on my window as a makeshift tripod to get the most natural light in. But anyway, I wanted to do a quick video talking about all of my hand knits and starting from the first piece to the most recent. And I did separate them into two separate categories. So there are sweaters and cardigans and then accessories. So they will be separated. But I thought it would be fun to sort of go down memory lane and talk about each of the pieces. We'll be talking about the pattern design and how it felt to knit it, and also the materials that I used, like the different yarn brands and things like that. So I have my London Fog per usual. All right, so here is my stack of sweaters and cardigans, starting from first to most recent. So starting off, we have the Felix pullover in Let Lopey. This was the first sweater I ever completed. There is technically a sweater vest before this, but we have since frogged her. RIP, not a good project. We all have to start somewhere, so it's totally fine. This was my first ever top-down raglan sweater, and color-wise, in love with this. Really great pattern, awesome for beginners, just really wonderful all around. I love the wide neckband on it, and I just think that this color is really beautiful and unique, and it has a really nice halo to it. And as somebody who is not a huge fan of holding yarns together in terms of adding mohair to get this effect, I love that it just does that on its own. I will say that it's a little bit scratchy, so if that's not really your thing, then beware, because I have a pretty high scratch tolerance, and this kind of gets me a little bit, but I still wear it all the time and I still think it's really worth it. The patterning here kills me. It's so beautiful. It does kind of go away once it's on. I don't feel like it's as obvious, but still such a great piece. And I would knit this again. I would knit it again in Let Lopey, and I would definitely recommend this pattern designer. My second piece here was my first petite knit project, and it's a slip-over vest. So I wish that I haven't worn this in a while because we're just now transitioning it into colder weather here, so it's been in storage, so it's a little bit, it needs to be reblocked. But things that I love about it, I love the extremely, extremely wide neck holes here. This yarn, I'll put the yarn details here, absolutely loved working with it. Really soft. If I remember correctly, also very affordable. The construction of this blew my mind. This was my first time doing a petite knit project, so where you start from the back and then work your way over towards the front, and then go down. I loved that. I thought it was super creative. It really engaged my mind to knit with it. I learned a lot of new things when I was working on this. So I learned how to do Italian tubular bind off, and that was really wonderful. In terms of cons, and this isn't really a con about the project as much as it is a con about making this when I was still kind of a novice knitter. I don't know if it was the yarn choice or what, but, or maybe I did my sizing wrong or something, but the neck is quite tight, even with that tubular bind off. And it's tight, and also the yarn has actually broken right here because it's quite woolen spun, which makes me really sad. And I would love to reknit this in maybe a better yarn choice. I just don't reach for it so much because I know it's gonna smush the heck out of my hair, and that it's gonna be kind of a pain to take off. So sort of a bummer. But like I said, if you chose maybe a hardier yarn for this, one that would give you a little bit more buoyancy and stretch, I think that it would be a great project. Love the split hem. The only modification that I did here was I did a twisted ribbing instead of just the normal 1x1 rib, and I'm really glad I did because I think it looks really lovely. So overall, the pattern, I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. The yarn is also a 10 out of 10, but just not together. Together, and with my skill level at the time, because this was only my second sweater, I'm gonna rate this like a 7 out of 10. All right, next up, we have the latte sweater in Jagger Spun. So I mentioned this in one of my last videos, but all of my Jagger Spun pieces are now very precious to me because Jagger Spun is going out of business, which is just really sad and unfortunate, because look at this color. It is so unbelievably beautiful. Sorry, there's a little bit of lint in here and stuff, but it's just so nice. I mean, look at that little fleck of hot pink. It's so lovely. But this sweater, honestly, this should have been my first ever sweater, and technically it was. It was another project that I tried doing when I was brand new to knitting sweaters and just never ended up completing. I totally could have though. I mean, it's easier than the first sweater I did end up completing, in the sense that, you know, this has that sort of lace work around the raglan. This one here is just straight up raglan, classic raglan sleeve. Really love the thickness of this. My only issue with this is perhaps the gauge is a little bit too small, perchance. It's quite a dense fabric. I think maybe I could have gone up a needle size just a wee bit. I can't remember what the gauge is for this project, but yeah, overall, really love it though, and the color is excellent. It's very wearable. All right, the next piece here is the Utna slipover, I think is what it's called. And this is knit up in Icicle Eco Soft. So I actually have a video on my channel where I'm working on this, and there's a very funny backstory where I messed up on one of the patterned rows, because as you can see, it's a knit purl kind of checkered pattern. I'm really impressed with myself with what I did here, because I had a giant chunk on the back where I accidentally did multiple rows of knit stitches. I can't even find where my mistake was. Anyway, what I did is I went through and I took a tapestry needle and I sewed fake purl stitches into it, and you genuinely cannot tell at all. It's amazing, it's wonderful. Don't recommend doing that. I recommend just being a responsible knitter and ripping back, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. In terms of construction, again, absolutely loved this piece so very much, so fun. Yarn, also incredible. The only thing, again, we're talking about yarn pairings here, people. Yarn pairings with patterns. This pairing is maybe a little bit too light. That's something that EcoSoft is really known for, is it's really light, extremely lightweight quality to it, and it's stunning and it's beautiful, but it's a little tiny bit too light in the sense that I'm not crazy about the way that it drapes when I'm wearing it. Let's just have a little moment for this halo. So beautiful, so beautiful, and I love that neckline. I love the V-neck. Yeah. And this next one is the Versal sweater, knit up in Noro yarns. This drape is perfect for me. It's almost kind of like a sweatshirt sort of energy to it. And the self-striping that happened with this yarn is simply the best. It's so good. I love that white that ended up around the neckline. I mean, how much more perfect could that stripe have been placed? I was talking with some friends about how catastrophic it would have been if it was like right across here or something. So it was perfect. I absolutely love it. That's where, if I had to pick a place for the stripe to be, it would have gone right there. So very happy about that. I also love that this neckline can go either up, or it can be tucked outward, or it can be folded inward, and it just creates such a beautiful mock neckline. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's such a beautiful piece. Very happy with the length that I did. The only oopsie that I did while making this was that, well, first thing, I think I would have actually gone with a turtleneck instead of the option to do the roll neck, just because I think that the turtleneck is really nice. And then I also accidentally, for the yoke, I was supposed to knit, I think, an additional 3 or 4 inches on top of what I did. So the yoke is actually a lot smaller than what it's supposed to be. I was just being bad, and I was knitting away and just not paying attention. But it still worked out. It still fits me really well. I think it was just supposed to be a little bit more oversized than it ended up being, but I still really love it. All right, and then this is the last of my sweaters. Oh man, every time I look at this, it just fills me with so much joy. But this is the Petite knit Esther cardigan, knit up again in Jagger spun. And I want to knit this a bajillion times over. It was so relaxing to do, and I feel very, very empowered to do more motif knitting like this, just more textured pieces. I also have never done cables before, and that is really on my list now after knitting this. For this one, the gauge I think was a little itsy bitsy off, again, on me. Are we sensing a theme here in terms of how detailed of a knitter I am? But yeah, it came out quite thick. I think I could have gone up a needle size. I chose a size small. Because there was an extra small, and then an extra small, and then a small. I think it's supposed to be pretty oversized in itself. The other thing that came out a little bit weird, again, I'm positive it's something that I did, is that the neckband came out pretty wide. Compared to in her pictures, it's a little bit more inward. But I think that was just a sizing issue on my part. The other thing I wanted to say about this, if you're feeling intimidated to make a piece like this, so let's expose myself real quick here. You can see on some of these motifs, maybe, okay, the bottom one's a good example. See how that little triangle right there is not perfectly centered? It's fine. You know what I mean? Like, when I was working on it and I realized that I messed up a little bit on the pattern, I had this temptation to go back and fix it. And, you know, I'm all about doing the hard work and going back and fixing as needed. But with this sweater in particular, you're really not gonna notice it at the end of the day. Like, when you look at it cohesively, it's completely fine. And another thing that I did weird somehow is when I was doing my sleeves, they're actually not even. So you can see for some reason the pattern here is facing more inward versus here. You can see the pattern on the proper section of the sleeve. I think I just messed up on where I picked up to start knitting. But again, once I'm wearing it, it's really not that big of a deal. You just have to decide for yourself when you're a knitter what you're willing to put up with in terms of mistakes. I'm very type B about knitting, you know, as long as the fit is comfortable and overall it works for me, then I like it, you know. I'm really not picky about the details. And if anything, I kind of like the misfitness of the mistakes because it's a handmade item. And, you know, I'm, as I mentioned a bajillion times before, I'm in nursing school right now. And the memory of my messed up sleeves to me kind of signifies like, oh, when I was working on this, I was totally brain dead from school. So anyway, that is the Esther cardigan. 200 out of 10 would do it again. Loved the yarn, even though it came out a little bit thicker than I was anticipating. I really wouldn't change anything about it. So loved this one. All right, let's talk accessories. So it feels a little bit silly to even mention this because this isn't even a specific pattern that I followed. It's just this is the first thing I ever knit. It's just a knit purl scarf. I believe it's in piece fleece, but having a brown scarf is excellent. I feel like, especially if you're somebody with brown hair and brown eyes, I say just freaking go for it, commit to the bit. I think it really looks nice on. My only complaint, and I feel this way about all scarves, is I feel like you need to just go all out and make them really, really long. This one's fine for the length, but I would have liked it to be a little teensy tiny bit longer. Also, in terms of yarn choice, 10 out of 10 would do it again. Piece Fleece is such an incredible company. Look up their backstory if you haven't heard of them before. They are really, really awesome. And this just has the most wonderful stretch to it. I actually don't think that I blocked this piece, and that's why it's still very elasticated like this, which personally I prefer for a scarf, because if this were any more drapey, it wouldn't really have that structure that it has like this, which I personally really like. So yeah, I really recommend knitting you up a nice elasticated, unblocked, woolly wool scarf for this season. All right, this next piece is called the Wraparound by Rose Knitwear. And okay, so this is the piece that I was talking about that I repurposed from my first ever sweater that I made. This is a wild design. I'm sure that this exists elsewhere and I just hadn't heard of it before, but the concept is so cool. This piece, was not expecting it to take as long as it did, because I mean, it's a lot of knitting. It's really, really, really quite long. In terms of complaints about this one, it's a little bit awkward to position. And again, this totally could be a gauge thing on my part, but like I like this from the front, but sometimes from the back, it can look a little bit like it's caught up on itself in a weird way. And you kind of have to make sure, if you're going out with just this on as your sweater or your cardigan you wrap around, you just have to make sure that it looks normal in the back, because sometimes it can just look a little bit funny. And also can't really layer this. I think it's better as a standalone piece. So again, just in terms of practicality, the weather that you wear this in could be a little bit difficult to find, because you know, it has to be cold enough to wear something that's very woolly wool, but not quite cold enough that you need to wear something over top of this. The other thing about this piece is that you can also wear it as a normal scarf, so you just don't put your arms in, you know, and that's very cozy in and of itself as well. This yarn is Harrisville design. I think it's called Turbo. Has a lot of really, really nice blues and greens mixed in. Really love it. Next up, we have this scarf by Jared Flood from Brooklyn Tweed in their shelter yarn. Yeah. This is actually supposed to be quite a lot bigger than it is. But I made it this size because I wanted to have a little bit of a handkerchief situation, because I was about to embark on a farm stay. I lived on a goat farm and helped birth baby goats for a little bit over a month. And so I wanted to have a little handkerchief to keep myself warm, because it was early April and we were kind of up in the mountains a little bit. So that's why I made this, and I love this. I probably get the most wear out of this when compared to basically anything else that I've made, to be honest, because it doesn't have to be that cold outside for me to pick it up and wear it. And I just really like the look of it, and I love that it can be reversible as well. It really helps that it's a neutral color because it goes with so many things. And I just think it's really cute. I just think it adds a nice little spice to any outfit. And I bet you could even, if you made it a little bit bigger, you could even do a little head wrap sort of thing. But 10 out of 10 for this. Love shelter yarn. Beware that it is quite woolen spun, so just be careful when you're working with it, but really, really love this design, and it was very satisfying to make. All right, next up we have this beanie by Petite Knit, and I knit this up with Jagger Spun in their heathered line. I really like that because it's that same heathered, they have the same accents on the color. So both that blue and that green have like a really nice halo. No complaints about this project. I liked it a little bit more when I had longer hair. I'm not crazy about how hats look on me with my short hair, but I also messed up on my decreases here because this was the first hat that I ever made for myself. But overall, not really any complaints here. I mean, it's a beanie, it's straightforward, and I would definitely recommend this pattern as a first beanie pattern for anyone who is looking for one. Okay, last but not least, these are my absolute pride and joy. They are knit with, again, Jagger Spun remnant yarn. I used to run a bit of a hand knit sock business, and so I had a bunch of leftover yarn from that. So I used that to make these Petite Knit Celeste mittens. And this was my first ever color work project, and I just freaking love these. I think that it feels particularly special that these are all remnant yarns from clients that I had in the past, and I never would have picked these colors out myself because this isn't my typical color palette, but I just think that these turned out so unbelievably well. And I would love to make another pair of these in some more colors, but just really, really stunning color work. Please ignore the little hole in the mitten. I need to fix that. But again, Petite Knit just really knocked it out of the park with this one. She has a yoke sweater that has the same color work. I think it's just the Celeste sweater, if that's something that you're into. But yeah, I just feel very, very proud of the color work here. All right, my friends, that was the last piece. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully that was interesting and insightful maybe about some of these yarns and the patterns. Overall, I just think all of these designers are so wonderful, but if you are a beginner knitter, I can't recommend Petite Knit's projects enough. They are just really well written, very straightforward, and I found them to be the most empowering because she helped me understand difficult techniques in a really easy to understand way. That is it for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.